Shalom Haverim. Welcome back, friends, to your program, Building Bridges, when we discuss the possibility of a friendship and closeness between Christians and our Jewish friends. And today in our studio, we have our guest again, Sergey Greg. Welcome, Sergey.
Thank you.
We also have Daniel Stojanovic. Welcome back, Daniel.
Thank you very much.
And we also have here our dear friend, Reinaldo. How are you doing, Reinaldo?
Doing fine, Gerardo, and always a pleasure to be here.
And as you heard, my name is Gerardo, and I'm your host for today's program. And today we are going to bring you a hot topic. Yes, it's not easy to discuss, but we are trying to shed light and insights on this very important topic. We today are going to speak about Messiah. What are the expectations about the Messiah, and could Jesus Christ really be the promised Messiah that the Tanakh is talking about? So let me begin with Reinaldo. Reinaldo, can you give us, please, some explanation about why Christians believe that Jesus is the promised Messiah?
Well, we see when the basic, go to the New Testament. When you go to the New Testament, you see that there is a very strong messianic emphasis. When you say Jesus Christ, indeed, what we are saying is Jesus the Messiah. Because Christ is the Greek form for Messiah, which is the word coming from a more Hebrew background, And what's interesting, why did so many people speak about Messiah, And when, for example, when Gamaliel spoke about the growing Christian community in Jerusalem, he said, well, there have appeared so many Messiahs lately. If this one is the right one, or this movement is from God, they will grow. If not, they're going to disappear like the others. But when we go now, in the last decades, have brought to light many discoveries from the Judaism from 1st century. And when we compare the writings from from Qumran, the Dead Sea Scrolls, with many other writings that were discovered from the Judaism from that time, one of the things that was really hot at the time is the prophecy of the 70 weeks of Daniel. And because of this prophecy, many people believed that Messiah was about to come. And when we read the New Testament, it starts, for example, like Luke, they speak about Gabriel. Jesus speaks about the time is fulfilled, time is come, in the plenitude of time. Most of this reference is reference to the fulfillment of the prophecy of Daniel, that counting from the time it started, to be fulfilled according to the text, was about to be completed in the time that Jesus appeared, And this was a very strong messianic expectation in the 1st century.
So we can say that Jews have been expecting the Messiah for a long time. And maybe when Jesus was here on earth, there was this expectation that is still around us today. People that live in Israel, you can read ads and listen to people that are talking about the Messiah. But at the same time, we Christians believe that he came while Jews are still waiting for him. What can you tell us about this, Daniel?
I consider that even though there is a separation of 2,000 years, we have an excellent common ground. I remember discussing with some Jewish leaders who say that they appreciate the fact that Christians are talking about the Messiah, because this is a Jewish mindset. We didn't imagine the idea of the Messiah. It's not current, or it's not very well presented in several concepts that someone will come from outside to intervene on behalf of the people, on behalf of believers. And to promote the idea of a Messiah means God's intervention. And I consider that even though there are 2,000 years of difference, Christians strongly believe, and I subscribe to this, that Jesus Christ was Messiah, and the accent was put on some aspect of his ministry, but biblical Christians believe that that Messiah who came will come again in order to fulfill what was the true role of the Messiah. He is not only a king to come and to reign, he is also someone who is sent by God to intervene and to facilitate salvation. And then we enter in a long discussion. So basically, I consider that Christian concept of Messiah is very similar to the concept of Jewish concept of Messiah, and we can build bridges if we stay biblical.
Now, we know it's a hot topic because Christians believe that the Messiah already came, and it was Jesus, Yeshua.
Yeah.
But for many Jews, he was not the Messiah, and they have their arguments. So now I want to ask Sergey, because Sergey was brought up in a Jewish family. What was the main reason that led you to accept Jesus Christ as the Messiah?
Good question. My personal testimony would be like this. I grew up in a secular Jewish family. And my first contact with Christianity back to the USSR, the country where I was born, was with Russian Orthodox Church. So when I entered first time at my teens to the Russian Orthodox Church, I don't know how, but they knew that I'm Jewish, and they sent me out. They said to me, so it was not nice experience being first time inside of the church building. They said to me, "Go out, Judah."
Wow.
Then I was convinced that if one day I will come back to God and I will believe in God, so I will have anything in common with Christianity. But later, I met nice, good people, even though they call themselves Christians. They were very close to my understanding of my spiritual roots. So they kept Sabbath. They were holding the whole Bible as a one book, the scriptures, the Old Testament or Tanakh, with the New Testament. And they said, we are very close to your nation. We are saying to you, welcome to us. And I say, okay, nice welcoming, but what will be behind this? And behind that was deep and solid biblical teachings. So I went through all the prophecy of Old Testament, describing that no religion exists without the concept or idea of Messiah, because Messiah in original language, it's Mashiach. Mashiach means someone who has authority, who was appointed, anointed with the oil for the mission. And his mission was to save. So Jewish people, they were expecting all the time and still live with this idea of someone with authority from God to be a savior. So I went through all, we call it messianic prophecy, and I was 100% sure that Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, he is a real and true Messiah.
Thank you, Sergey, for sharing with us your story. I'm guessing that for any person with a Jewish background, to accept Jesus is not an easy task. And maybe friends will turn away, family even. But thank you for sharing, because it gives us a very good perspective. So we know it's a hot topic, and I want to hear from you maybe some Bible arguments. Why do you find that Jesus is the Messiah? Because we will hear from many that, no, he did not fulfill the prophecies, and there's so many reasons that can be given for people to not to believe in him. So now I will start with you, Daniel. Can you share maybe one prophecy that convinced you that, yes, he is because of this?
When you read the entire Old Testament or Tanakh or First Testament, you come to the conclusion that the teaching of Messiah as a king is not sufficient to explain everything that God does for human beings. There is one aspect of reigning, of authority, but there is another aspect. And when you put everything together, you will understand that the part of reconciliation with God is essential. Imagine that this question of salvation was not solved, and we believe that it was solved by the first coming of Yeshua HaMashiach, then we would be in trouble to say how it is possible that when the Messiah comes, we will have certitude of being saved. Salvation is essential, and without salvation, the encounter with Messiah would be a very difficult topic for each and everyone. This is why, for me, Isaiah 53 is one of the crucial texts, not the only one, but a crucial text explaining to us that all elements that existed in the temple and in the sanctuary before, pointing to the necessity of reconciliation through shedding blood, was fulfilled by the Messiah. The text says in Isaiah 53, he was wounded for us. And this question of substitution is the central point of Pesach, is the center point of every worship service in the temple, is the center point of receiving the salvation by God himself. And this is why I say, by reading prophecies, and especially Isaiah 53, I see that God didn't come just to reign, he came first to qualify us to be part of his kingdom. And then, when we go through this transformation, we will joyfully be part of his kingdom.
Sergey, what about you? Maybe one prophecy, one Bible text that when you read it, you said, okay, this is for me the proof. Yeshua must be the Messiah.
Sure, I truly believe that we even cannot count all the prophecies about Messiah in Tanakh or Old Testament, because every text, like it's written, it was words of Jesus himself. Everything that was written, if you cannot find me in the writings, it's meaningful-less. So the question is not to find some and best and better argument. It's more today. It's more political question. The Judaism just trying to keep their walls and not to mix with others, and the Christianity, they made a copyright for Jesus Christ, and also they don't want to build bridges. But my understanding that all scriptures was giving us by a reason. Of course, we have poetry, of course, we have historical books, but in every biblical text, we see this like a red line, the willing of Almighty God to save us. So we could discuss many of them, but again, it's dependent on us. Would we laugh and be open to others building the bridges, or we keep our walls? But again, one strong for me, it's according book of Prophet Daniel, that describing the times and exact date when the true Messiah have to come first time. So if we go deeply to this prophecy, so we can see who is the real Messiah.
Okay.
And I think Reinaldo was pointing that.
So we have Isaiah 53, we have the book of Daniel, chapter 7, 8, and 9. Reinaldo, maybe is there something else that can be added about a prophecy that points to Jesus that could be maybe for you the turning point and say, yes, there's no other way, he has to be the Messiah?
Well, I see. I would agree with what was said here, no? But I think that the most clear indication concerning arguments for Jesus as Messiah comes from the book of Daniel.
Yeah.
There's no other so precise, you know. When we look prophecies about Messiah, they have this usually in the prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, they have a very complex picture, which you have the one side, the king, from the Davidic king, reigning, governing, exerting power, you know. And the other side, you have this suffering Messiah, which dies, suffers, you know. And Jews are very aware of this. It's not that they, you know, even in the traditional Jewish interpretation, one way of solving these apparent contradictions, how can the Messiah be suffering, at the same time be a king, reigning, you know? They propose the idea to have two Messiahs. A Messiah, suffering Messiah, which is usually called Messiah ben Yosef, Messiah son of Joseph. Like Joseph, he will suffer, you know. But then we have the Messiah ben David, Messiah, the son of David, who will rule, you know. And they say the two will come. First, the Messiah suffering, and then the Messiah, you know, David, one before the other, you know. But the book of Daniel, he does give an answer about this. And this is where I think is more precise. Because in Daniel 9, in the prophecy of the 70 weeks, he said that in 7 prophetic weeks, which would be 490 years, Messiah will come to solve the problem of sin.
Exactly.
And he gave his life because he will be cut, you know. So he comes first to solve the problem of sin, to confirm the covenant. And when you count the prophecy according to biblical indications, it comes exactly to the time of Jesus. But it's precise, very exactly. It's very strong, you know. But then the same book of Daniel, like chapter 2, chapter 7, chapter 12, it speaks about the Messiah coming at the end of history.
Yeah.
To rule, to govern, to establish the kingdom of God. So the book of Daniel speaks about two comings. One in history, in the space of 70 prophetic weeks, to solve the problem of suffering, but he will die. To do the sin, suffering, he will suffer. Then at the end of history, he'll come to reign.
In according book of Daniel, this is the same Messiah.
He is the same Messiah. So instead of a different Messiah, is two comings in different moments of history to solve specific different problems, but all relate to the image of Messiah. So for me, this is the most precise and the biblical answer for the issue. How can Messiah be a king and a suffering servant?
Yeah.
You know, so I think this is a biblical key to interpret. But you know, probably one thing Christians must realize: the greatest problem for Jewish people to see in Jesus possibility of Messiah is not related itself in Jesus, but is related to the history of Christianity, like Sergey told, you know, he entered the church, they put him out. Go out, Judah! You know, that means Christians have been misrepresenting Messiah very badly throughout the centuries. And this Messiah that Christians interpret and believe, which is not correspond to Jesus in the Bible, and not the Jesus, the real Jesus, is very difficult for anyone to accept. It's not only Jewish, it's even anyone. But when we go to biblical Jesus, to the Bible, then we see another picture of him, which is the true picture. And this one, many people say, well, this is possible. There is light there, you know. And probably, as we have said before, when we build bridges, we build in common ground we have, in the common ground that Christians and Jews share is the Bible. We should go back to the Bible and really friendly, respectfully interact on the Bible, and probably God will surprise us.
And I would add to this, you know, that usually New Testament people recognize as a book that belongs to the church movement, but it's very Jewish book, written by Jews, about Jewish life, about Jewish people. And Jesus himself was coming through the Jewish nation.
Uh-huh. I read a book recently by Rabbi Shemuel Botea, a very well-known rabbi in the United States. And the title of the book is Jesus Kosher, Kosher Jesus. You know, and he said he was with a group of students. A Christian approached him and said, "If you don't believe Jesus, you are going to hell." You know, and he never had any interest for Jesus. But the exchange was so intense. He said, "I'm starting to study about Jesus," and he got impressed. He said, "Wow, there's a good Jew here," you know? And he wrote a book saying, well, here I'm expressing my appreciation for the teachings, for his life. He did not say, I believe he's a Messiah, but he's very Jewish.
Yeah.
You know?
Of course.
And the Christians has hijacked him from us. And we need to know him better.
Can I just add something? We mentioned that there are two different group of texts. One about a suffering servant, that is Messiah, and another reigning. I just want to connect, if you read the prophet Isaiah, you will have, as Reinaldo mentioned very well, several poems about the suffering servant. The first one is starting with Isaiah 42. And when you read this text, you discover that it is a humble servant, not uplifting himself, not reigning, not being the center of attention. And I am just connecting another text talking about the Messiah, a very known prophecy in Micah chapter 5. The text says, "But you, Bethlehem, Ephratah, though you are little among thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth to me the one who will be ruler in Israel." So you understand that Messiah didn't only projected to come as imposing authority, but he was presenting another way of ruling, humility. And if you read The Suffering Servant, you will understand that the essence of authority in God's concept is not power, is the power of love, the power of compassion, the power of transformation, the power of sacrificing self for the well of others. And you understand that even the place that all Jews, if you talk to them, from where the Messiah will come, Bethlehem, it is obvious. But this place is a place a little place among thousands in Israel, which means that his origin of suffering servant will bring him to accomplish the first part of his ministry, which is to serve. And when we accept this serving Messiah, then we are qualified to reign with him.
Thank you very much for these insights, because we are discussing a hot topic, and a topic that sometimes raises questions, and mostly it doesn't unite people. Mostly it divides people. So we have a few more seconds, and I want to ask one final question. Maybe we cannot address it in the whole, but maybe we can just share a little insight. We have discussing about suffering Messiah, also a king that will reign, but where do you find the idea that the Messiah had to die in order to save us? Anyone?
Well, I think that the text of Isaiah 53 is the most classic one. You know, they say, for his wound, we were healed.
Yeah.
And we are away from God, and he put his out on his back, you know, and through his sacrifice, he would justify many, you know. And so I think this is the prophecy, the most clear one that we have concerning the need for dying for someone.
And if someone asks, because when we go through the poems of Isaiah, in some parts we read that this servant is Israel. And some people will say, no. All these prophecies are about Israel.
Yeah.
And Israel is the suffering servant. Can we say it different?
Because the question is very interesting, this point, because you have the pronouns there. They say, you see the prophet is speaking, prophet is part of Israel, you know, and they say, the Lord pleased the Lord to offer him as a sacrifice because of our sin.
Yeah, exactly.
He suffered. So you have we and he.
Yeah, exactly.
So these pronouns say that it's not here is speak about someone specific.
Okay.
Because the sin of our sins is on him, you know, and that's...
Can I just say 2 words? To be specific, Isaiah said, therefore I will divide him a portion with the great, because he poured out his soul unto death.
Unto death. So we are discussing these ideas, but please, it's not for us to say you are in this side, we're on this side. We're trying to find a bridge. So both people are expecting a Messiah. It's just a small difference that we believe that he already came and he will come back. Thank you for being with us. We will be together next time to discuss more ideas of how to build bridges.